Welcome back everybody to another tier list. Today's tier list is going to be for the Fast and Furious villains, the ones from the first movie all the way up until the new Fast and Furious spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. I was thinking about who to include in this tier list. So we have the tier list of the main antagonist villains, not secondary antagonists, not henchmen. So maybe some villains that you've recognized in the previous Fast and Furious movies will not be in here. So you have 9 villains, the ones from each one of the Fast and Furious franchise. 9 movies, 9 villains. So we got all the way from the first movie with Johnny Tran all the way up until the most recent one with Brixton Lore. So before we get into this tier list, how would you put these characters into the tier list? We have S for being like the best of the best, A being a really great villain, B here we have the villain that's, okay, C is a kind of villain, and D is a pretty bad villain. So the first one we got here, and these are, I'll probably do these in order of the movie. So the first one we have here is Johnny Tran. Johnny Tran was really into racing, and the cops busted his house a couple times. He burned some cars and tried to hurt people. I thought he was a pretty vicious villain. A good way to start the franchise. Was into racing a lot and had some past history with Toretto, and he had his own turf and everything. I really like Johnny Tran. He had some emotional moments about, his parents thought he was being disrespectful and everything. So I think I'm going to put Johnny Tran here in the B. He's an okay villain. Not the best of the best, but a decent villain. So looking for Carter Verone, Too Fast, Too Furious. I watched Too Fast, Too Furious the other day, and I thought Carter Verone is such a good villain. People really fear him. The way that Brian and Roman Pierce just sit there and listen to him why he's torturing people, it's really menacing. So I really like Carter Verone in the Too Fast, Too Furious movie. People fear him. That scene where he has that guy and he puts the rat on his stomach and burns the can. That is terrifying. I don't want to be around Carter Verone at all. So I think Carter Verone deserves to be in the S. I really like Carter Verone, and I think that's partly due to the actor does such a good job as a villain. So I really like him in this movie. Moving on to Tokyo Drift, DK. DK was okay villain. He wasn't anything like spectacular. Wanted to do right by his family and race Han all the time. And then once Han, turned on DK, he tried to kill him. And so I think he goes in the C section. He's a pretty good racer, actually. He's really good at drifting, but there's not enough development for his character. Moving on to number 4, Fast and Furious, we have Baraga. Baraga started off not acting as Baraga. He tried to be somebody else so no one would believe that he would be Baraga. And then he had Brian and Dom start not racing for him, start doing different tasks for him. Even when he wasn't Baraga, he wasn't really menacing, and even when he was Baraga, he wasn't really menacing either, because you spent the whole time him acting like a secondary villain when he was really the main villain, and when you realize that he was the main villain, it really wasn't impactful. So he's not terrible. I'm going to go ahead and put him in the C section, just because I think they could have done something a little bit different with him, and it made him, a stronger villain. So Fast 5, Hernan Reyes. Doesn't really feel like he's a villain too much in that movie, just because of the plot for Fast 5. They want to steal the money. They were being hunted down by Dwayne Johnson's character. So they just want to steal Hernan Reyes' money. So they want to just take it all. And, they have that safe and everything. He doesn't really do anything to be like a true villain. He just sits in the background, touches Giselle's butt, and has a bunch of money, but they want to take it from him because he's a bad person. So I think he's the only character that I would put in the D, because he doesn't really do much to make him feel like a villain, besides the fact that he has money and he's corrupted. Moving on to Fast and Furious 6, that's Owen Shaw. Owen Shaw was pretty good. He had some cars that were pretty crazy, and he had a lot of henchmen, so he seemed like a true leader in the Fast and Furious 6 movie. That's the movie where Letty worked with him, and she didn't know who she really was. I liked Owen Shaw. I liked Owen Shaw's story a little more once you get into Deckard Shaw's story. But Owen Shaw, I think he was ruthless, and he wasn't afraid to do things and get what he wanted. People feared him, and he was able to completely ruin people's cars and everything. It's pretty cool. He's got a pretty big jet, and he had the benefit of a long runway at the end of the Fast and Furious 6 to help him get what he wanted. And so I'm going to put him in the A section. Not the best, but still a really good villain. Moving on to Furious 7, Deckard Shaw was the villain for that movie, and eventually became a good guy in the Furious 8 movie, Fate of the Furious. But I really like Deckard Shaw. I thought he was really cool. For being such a small guy, he's pretty ripped, and he was always getting into a fight with Toretto, and he killed Han, and tried to blow up Dom's house. So there's so many different things that he did to make it seem like he's a true ruthless villain, a villain deserving of a movie, and I think he was really well written, and the choice to have him be in the Fate of the Furious and then Hobbs and Shaw movie makes him seem like just a stronger character. I like him more as a good person rather than a villain, but I still think he is a really good villain. I'm going to go ahead and put him in the S section. Next we have Cipher, played by Charlize Theron. She was one who got Dom to turn on his family, killed Elena, and had a submarine with her as well. She was a villain, I think the villain that had most of her situation well thought out. She thought of everything except for the end, but her plan was very elaborate, and I really liked that. It made it, test the characters in the Fate of the Furious, and having Dom turn on his family is something that I never thought would happen, but she got it done, and I can't wait to see what she does in the next movie, Furious 9, because it's reported that she'd be back for that movie. But I really did like her in the Fate of the Furious, a very strong villain. So there you guys have it, the 3 S's so far. And then we have A, Owen Shaw, B, Johnny Tran, C, DK and Baraga, and D, Hernan Reyes. And then we have Brixton Lore, played by Idris Elba. I thought Brixton Lore was a very generic villain. Wanted to get a virus. I feel like anybody could play Brixton Lore's character, but Idris Elba was a good actor. He was very strong. He was like a cyborg, and he was able to punch Dwayne Johnson and make him just fall backwards. I thought that was pretty impressive. Besides the fact that he's generic, I do like him. His storyline wasn't very well thought out. I just like that he was so strong and really posed a threat to two of the strongest characters in the franchise, Deckard Shaw and Luke Hobbs. But I'm going to go ahead and put him in the A section. He'd be a little bit stronger if he had a better storyline and he wasn't so generic, but I really did like his strength and his abilities. I thought they were really cool. So there you guys have it, all of the characters, all the villains in the tier list. I didn't go with any secondary characters. Like you could have done the other villain from Furious 7, Johnny Tran's friend, and DK's friend as well. There's so many different little ones. All the henchmen from Furious 6 and 5 and 7 and 8. There's so many different ones, but the S's, the best ones are Carter, Deckard, and Cipher. A, really good villains, Owen Shaw and Brixton Lore. B, okay villains would be Johnny Tran. C, villains would be DK and Baraga, and then the bad villain, the my least favorite, and the one that doesn't have enough time to make it seem like he's a villain, and that's Hernan Reyes. How would you put these 9 villains in a tier list? Let me know in the section down below. Stay tuned this weekend. I'll be having a tier list for the characters from the Fast and Furious franchise, the good characters. So none of these villains or the secondary villains will be in that tier list. So stay tuned for that one. My name is JustinWatchesMovies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.